Welcome to Nightmare County. I'm your host, Rando M. Gore. And tonight, we're going to talk about top 5 slasher movies that you probably should see that you probably haven't seen. I'm going with 5. I'm actually going to make this a two-parter video. This is going to be part 1. And I'm going to focus on the top 5, well, not necessarily the top 5, but 5 films that I believe that you should see in the slasher genre that you probably haven't. And I'm probably going to touch on, these are mainly obscure slasher movies. I'm staying away from the slasher genre, slasher series like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, or any others, or Scream. Anything that has, I think that are like more well known by people. These are the ones that only had one movie released, and you're going to find out mainly in this video that all these movies were released in the 1981, because that was like a booming year for slasher movies. But not all of them take place in 1981 or put out in 1981, but mainly throughout the 80s. I actually thought about just doing a top 10 slasher movies that were released in the 1980s, because that was really the golden era for slasher movies. And then later on, I was going to do a top 10 slasher movies of the 90s and the 2000s and so on, which I'm probably going to do. But I want to do, this is going to be the part 1 of top 10 slasher movies you should see with, and understand, this, even though I'm saying top 10 or top 5 or whatever, these aren't like, this is not a saying that number 5 is less than part 1 or less than number 1. Because really all these slasher movies are great in their own way. And this is not a least favorite to favorite list, or better to betterest list, or least or the less from the best. This is really just a top. These are just films I think you should see, especially if you love slasher movies, or if you want to give slasher movies a try and you don't want to watch the major slasher juggernauts like Jason and Michael Myers. This is really what this list is about. It's 5 obscure slasher movies that I think you will enjoy, part 1. And then probably later on I'll do a part 2. So let's get into this, with number 1 being Just Before Dawn. This 1981 inbred slasher flick, Just Before Dawn, was directed by Jeff Lieberman. It was filmed in Oregon, where the film follows a group of youths as they head out into the woods for some fun to visit an area of land that one of them had inherited. Yet, not really listening to the warnings of strangers or the locals telling them of the dangers that lay ahead, the group of kids soon find out that maybe they should have left, or they may not live to see the light of dawn. This was a well-made movie with a serious approach. Just Before Dawn has good character development with some decent kills, although not over the top like most slashers, especially with the many others that are on this list, laying in a scare factor that most should enjoy. Next up is The Burning from 1981. After a prank that goes horribly wrong, a common trait in most slasher movies, that involves the burning of a maintenance man at the local camp. He survives with 3-degree burns all over his body and spends his next several years in recovery at a hospital until one night he disappears, returning to the camp he almost died at. There he decides to reenact his own brand of vengeance on the campers. This movie is more or less known for Tom Savini's spectacular special effects work. And if there's one sequence that stands out above all, it's the raft sequence. And this sequence you can easily find on YouTube, as it is a favorite of slasher villains, especially of Tom Savini's work. Not only that, this movie is well directed and very suspenseful, as the director did an honorable job. It's a shame that no one hardly saw this flick, as it came out at a time that was actually it was released too soon to another camp slasher flick, Friday the 13th. Here's another one from 1981 called The Prowler, and it is another Tom Savini gore effects masterpiece that is directed by Joseph Zito. And most people who know Joseph Zito know that he directed probably the best Friday the 13th sequel, with the part 4, The Final Chapter. This film carries Savini's best special effects work in my opinion. The film starts off during World War II as a soldier is kept alive from the hope he has built up from some Dear John letters he's received from the love of his life, Rosemary. But Rosemary, she has waited long enough for her lover to be and opts out for a local dude. Yet, when the scorned would-be lover returns, the Prowler attacks at the graduation dance, and from that day forward, graduation dances are canceled. 35 years into the future, the teenagers of the small town resurrect the graduation dance once again in a return to normalcy, not realizing they have reawakened the Prowler. And Prowler yet again goes on a very bloody killing spree. This was another slasher film that came in and was left to be forgotten. Luckily, over the years, it's kind of picked up a cult status along with all these other films that are on this list. I mean, this film it's violent and it's gory and it's utterly spectacular. Everything from the directing, from Joseph Zito to Tom Savini's effects they're top notch, and it's well worth seeing. Next up is a 1987 Italian slasher flick called Stage Fright. It's about an insane stage performer who killed 16 people before being locked up in an asylum. One night he escapes and heads to his next location, a theater where a group of stage actors and crew members have locked themselves inside to practice, not knowing the lunatic is now with them. Directed by the brilliant Michele Soavi, and I hope I said that correctly, so forgive me if I didn't, who directed the awesome Cemetery Man, one of the most memorable slasher movies on this list, mainly due to the way the killer looks, and the killer wears this giant owl head, which you would think would look awful, but for some reason this movie, it just works and it looks awesome, and it's incredibly memorable. It just works, trust me. This is a straight up from point A to point B slasher flick. I mean, once this movie starts, it just bulls rushes towards the end. There's no stupid character arcs to take away from the movie or anything. It's a straight up slasher flick. Probably of all the movies on this list, it doesn't have this needless amount of exposition or anything. It just starts up from point A and it just gets it going, and until you end up at point B. And to me, that makes it that much better because it's very cutthroat and gets the job done. It's tightly made. No, like I said, no pointless character arcs to take away from the movie, and it's very quick to give you the red stuff. And the last movie on this list for tonight is The Funhouse, released in 1981 and directed by Texas Chainsaw Massacre great Tobe Hooper. Here he brought us a more original slasher flick as a group of youngins attend a carnival and then decide to slip off into the funhouse as it is about to close and spend the night. But things go very badly soon as they witness a giant man in a Frankenstein mask kill another carnival worker. When the owner returns to see what has happened, he also sees that the money from the night's take has been taken as well. The large stepson of the owner goes into a fit of rage, beating himself before we finally see what's under the mask, and it is the stuff of nightmares. When the owner notices that the teens have stolen the money, the owner and his monster of stepson decide to hunt them down, trapping them inside the funhouse. Tobe Hooper did what he always did best. He makes the funhouse itself a character in the movie, just like he did with the hellacious home in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre film. The funhouse in its own way mocks the teenagers as they meet their fates. With an awesome setting, atmosphere, and awesome looking monster that you fear and actually have pity for, it's easy to recommend the funhouse, as it stands head and shoulders above almost all of the slasher counterparts that was released during the 80s. Sadly, we never got a sequel, and it truly deserves one. And the Funhouse movie holds a very special place for me because I actually had heard or read the novelization of this movie before I'd ever actually saw the movie. And the book was written by Dean Koontz, who is well known within the sci-fi horror genre when it comes to novels and stuff. And actually, I had heard the story from my dad, because whenever I was like 11, 12 years old. I can't remember. I think I was 11 years old, 10 or 11 years old, and I had a bunch of friends come over. I had about 10, 15 friends come over. We all went camping out in the woods, and having a birthday in October helps when it comes to camping and everything, because it's nice and cold. We were able to set a fire and everything. We had put out there's this big overhang out in the middle of the woods where we used to live, And we all went out there. We rode some trails and stuff like that, and we all came back to the overhang, and that's where we're camping and stuff. And my dad decided to tell us some campfire tales, and one of those tales he just basically retold the story of the Funhouse. Now, if you ever read the book from Dean Koontz on the Funhouse, it is very, very different to what you see of the Tobe Hooper movie, and I love them both. Each are different in their own way. Um, I love the novelization of the Funhouse, and I love the movie because they're just good. It's a good book, and it's a great movie. The Funhouse is actually probably one of my top five slasher movies of all time, if any list that I have, because of the importance and the memories behind it. Uh, and it's just got a memorable killer and so on and so forth. It's just damn good. But yeah, so the Funhouse holds a special place for me because my dad told that story to all me and all the kids. It scared the hell out of everybody. Um, and we're all camping. It's dark and everything, and all of a sudden it started just pouring down rain. And right after we'd just said all the scary stories and stuff, so it just added the whole atmosphere of being out in the woods and hearing those tales, and then your fire going out because of the rain. And then so we had to get on the ATVs, 4 wheelers and stuff, and head back towards to the house because where the encampment was, the rain was coming down so hard that water was hitting the ground and then was running down into where we were camping and everything. And it's just one of those weather changes. It's well known in Texas how it'll be sunny and cool, and then all of a sudden dark and rainy as hell. So yeah, so great memories behind all that, and that's the reason why I have a special place for the Funhouse. But I have a feeling that most people who haven't seen it would probably really enjoy it because it's very different from the most slasher movies you'll see, especially that during that era. But that all being said, this is part one of the 5 unusual slasher movies you probably haven't seen that you should see. And I'll do a part two later on this week, or I'll release that later on this week. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, hit that like button, and if you haven't already, subscribe because I would greatly appreciate it. And yeah, so don't be a stranger and tune in.